We need to reimagine urbanization in South Africa, do we not? The Human Settlements Minister, Mamoloko Kubai, has announced that UN Habitat and South Africa are in the process of developing a program to ensure sustainable urbanization. She was speaking yesterday at the second UN Habitat Assembly. It's taking place in Nairobi in Kenya. Of course, we know this country continues to face the challenge of providing affordable housing and to address apartheid-era spatial planning that still very much defines our economy. How are we going to do this? The minister joins us now via Zoom from Nairobi, Kenya. Good morning to you and thank you for your time.
Good morning, Bongani and your listeners. Thank you for hosting us.
You were speaking yesterday, you talked about how we are in this process of developing this program for the country. I'd imagine we're going to need technical and other expertise to really just reimagine how our cities function and how urbanization needs to take place going forward.
No, definitely, Bongani, we do need quite a lot of technical capacity. What we have done as a country, last year we released a document that assessed which responded to new urban agenda, South African's perspective, where we were assessing in terms of where we see migration of, for example, of people between rural areas to urban areas, the burden it will give or it will put on urban areas or cities, and what are the issues that we need to deal with. For example, out of that report, part of what we are picking up is that the secondary cities, which are not your metros, that are not given more funding in terms of development, are starting to show high level of pressure. For example, your Polokwane, your Nelspruit, your Kimberley, in terms of migration of people, and therefore a need, while they are not metros, classified as metros, they need to pay attention to them and support them. So technical capacity, we as a department, we are working together with POCTA to ensure that we can be able to put together, for example, engineering. But what we are seeing now, Bongani, is the future in terms of building in urban areas is different to what we used to do in South Africa.
Yes.
So we now, we're having quite a lot of rains, quite a lot of unpredictable weather patterns, that our technical capacity must be equipped to respond to that.
I've been talking this morning, Minister, about reimagining urbanization and what we need to do. Almost anyone you speak to will bemoan the fact that since 1994, although we've made great strides in providing houses to those who previously did not have homes, we've maintained apartheid spatial planning. In other words, we've built these RDP houses in the traditional township areas. Many of those residents then live far from their places of work. They have to travel distances to try and even get employment, yet nobody wants affordable housing next door.
Not true. If we look at, and as well, I mean, quite a lot of research. When I got into the portfolio, one of the science and innovation research institutions did a research to say our social housing is meant to close the apartheid spatial gap. But because we tended as a portfolio to move away. That's why my conversation with metros around the dilapidated buildings or buildings that are in inner city. I was having a conversation with some of the colleagues in Johannesburg. We are doing that in in Tebeka, in Port Elizabeth, Nelson Mandela Bay, where we're converting buildings into residential areas. There's one model that we've done. Currently, they're doing quite a lot for student accommodation. We want to do them for residential. And we believe that will assist because South Africans are spending majority of South Africans are spending almost 70% of their household income on transport. And it's our responsibility as a portfolio to respond to that. So when you look, for example, the other day, they showed one of the MMC Kenikunene going into the buildings. And I said, I've been writing to City of Johannesburg to say, can you hand over these properties to us so that we convert them into affordable housing or rental space, because
Sure.
majority of the people that you are seeing, even in informal settlements, don't qualify for free housing that we provide as RDPs.
Minister, of course, I mean, while that would be laudable, it would really be a drop in the ocean in terms of addressing the greater picture. What 2.6 million homes still need to be built, and that number is likely to grow even before you reach that target. Are you suggesting then that we are rethinking the model of providing homes? In other words, instead of the sprawl that we are used to, we are thinking of buildings and putting people in concentrated areas?
Our model has always been a mixed model, Bongani. I think what I said last time when I was in Bufering was that I think our communication has not been to the par where people understand what we are doing. We have a model that provides for RDPs. We have a model that provides for social housing, which is your rental space. We have gap market, what we launched, as well as revamped first home financing. All of them are meant to respond to different needs of South Africans. So if you look at the 2.6 that are saying are needing house, they will fall in different categories. But also because with the first home financing, working together with NHFC, we're working with partnership with the banks. So this is your gap market where we are trying to reduce the burden of many who are supposed to be paying, and therefore, and they can afford to pay. Now, when we talk about concentrated areas, is that the issue is bringing them closer to where they work and having economic opportunities, but social amenities. Not everybody wants to stay far away from where they work. So that model does work. We're seeing with the rental space, majority of the people, I mean, if you look at Midrand, for example, the growth of Midrand is people who are working between Johannesburg and Pretoria, who actually took over there. But some of them are staying in backyards, some of them are staying, trying to find low rental, and with the economic environment, some of them end up going back to informal settlements because they can't afford. And that's why we come in providing affordable rental space as the department.
There is a view that planning, zoning, and building regulations are influenced perhaps by first world standards and are at odds with our reality. And this is what some believe has led to unapproved shelters in unsafe places. In other words, yes, standardize, but do it perhaps to a minimum and don't make it so hard for ordinary folk to reach. Otherwise, it just becomes a bar that's too high. What's your thought on that?
Look, the issue around us taking what is global practices, but there's always an issue that we must localize. We talk about that even here at UN Habitat, that when a tool is developed at a global level, you've got to be able to take that tool, localize it to your country to make it working for you. So that's part of the issue. For me, major issue is that we have given huge responsibilities to municipalities in terms of development. I think what we need to do, and this is the conversation I had with Minister Nkadimeng, is to zoom into these municipalities and provide support. We are doing with the metro, but we don't work with all municipalities directly. We work with metros based on our mandate, and therefore we need him to assist us with other municipalities so that the turnaround time, but the flexibility and the bylaws that are passed by municipalities are not in such a way that they make poor people almost like victims or criminals within their cities. And those conversations will continue. There's been appeals even for us to look at legislation and change legislation that can help to make sure that people live habitably but with dignity. Made criminals within their cities.
It segues nicely to a thought. Your predecessor, Lindiwe Sisulu, signaled what appeared to be a policy shift. In other words, from providing top structure delivery, she mentioned that government now preferred a land release program, the idea of giving people a plot with basic services so they can build their own houses. Is this still the plan?
We're already implementing it based on the Constitution, Bongani. The vulnerable we've got to provide houses for. So we've got an obligation based on the Constitution to provide shelter for the elderly, people with disability, and child-headed households. But we continue to provide for other South Africans who are most vulnerable. But what we are doing now already, you'd see that quite a number of communities will say, please give us service sites. we'll build for ourselves in a later stage. Gauteng has been doing it, so we've got that as funding mechanism to support the provinces to be able to do it. Gauteng, Northern Cape has been excelling in that. They've done quite a lot in terms of service sites. We've been able to see quite a lot of people starting to say, we'll take over, we'll be able to build. This gives dignity to people because you are saying to them, we'll be able to support you, but still be able to give you some level of dignity to be owning and being responsible for doing for yourself. And some of the feedback we get from many of the people, for example, when I was in Free State, that's what majority of people were saying. We would want to build, but we do not have sites. Please help us with service sites, especially those of us who are below 30, between 30 and 45, we want to build for ourselves because we think we have the ability. It helps us to reduce the burden in terms of the fiscal constraint on the state. It does help us to ensure that people sit better.
Finally, Minister, because you're on the line, this Labour Court matter around the dismissed Nelly Letsholonyane, the idea that she was dismissed because you were stuck in a lift, that surely isn't who you are.
Definitely not, Bongani. I'm not so sure the sensation. The issue of the lift is because somebody who had a pacer was in the lift, and the issue was around people, can we check all the lifts that are supposed to be work, because we could have lost a staff member on that day. It's a separate matter. Nelly Letsholonyane has been facing various disciplinary issues that even predates before I arrived in the department. Actually, when I arrived, she was on suspension for 4 years with pay, which I said, I can't pay a senior official a DDG salary while she's sitting at home. She needed to come back while she faces DC. The DG sent her actually at the beginning of the year, gave her a written warning. So there's quite a lot of issues. I said in my statement, I don't want to do litigation over media and public space, want to allow the process to be done. What the court is saying to us is that the procedural matter, not that the merits are not valid, the procedure that we are following should be reviewed, should be looked into. We've appealed because we do believe that there is a need for us to put our foot down as the department, and non-tolerance for non-incompetence and non-delivery of services. I can't have officials in the department not meeting their targets, not doing their work, and I fold my arms when the public expects me to take accountability. And that's the real story here.
All right. We did try to invite Nelly Letsholonyane to speak on this. She can't speak whilst this matter is on appeal, and I appreciate that comment. Minister of Human Settlements, Mamologo Kubai.
Current events. Developing stories.
Tough questions.
Your voice making a difference.
This is Breakfast with Bongani Bingwa.